This was the third transfer in the last 4 years. Alongside Dad, we 4 siblings and our mom were also quite exhausted from constantly relocating our belongings from one place to another. The most significant challenge was frequently changing schools, adapting to a new environment, and getting accustomed to new people. Just when we would begin to settle in, Dad would announce yet another transfer to a different location. This time, our father was transferred to a rural village located on a small hill quite far from the bustling city. All 4 of us siblings were rather disappointed. Firstly, it was a village, and moreover, it was quite underdeveloped. There wouldn't be a proper school or suitable place to reside, and on top of that, our large family couldn't manage in a small house. Dad informed us that an old bungalow had been prepared by the forest department for us to stay in. No problem. With a heavy heart, we departed from our city residence and embarked on our journey towards the hill. Among the 4 siblings, I, Ravi, was the eldest, followed by my younger brother Sachin, and then our 2 younger sisters, Vini, who was 14 years old, and the youngest, Sony. Vini was the most lively and playful among all of us siblings. Her daily routine always included laughing, smiling, playing, jumping, and sometimes bothering everyone around her. We had also arrived at the newly acquired bungalow. The bungalow was much larger than we had imagined. One part of the bungalow was cleaned and ready for us to live in. The rest of the bungalow was almost half locked up, with some areas in severe disrepair. In some sections, doors were chained. We were exploring the bungalow. An elderly woman approached us, relying on the supportive assistance of a walking cane. She informed us that her ancestors had also been responsible for the upkeep and maintenance of this mansion. She was the sole offspring of her parents. After a period of time following her marriage, her husband unfortunately passed away, so she returned to her parental home and began taking care of this mansion. She appeared to be an elderly woman of approximately 75 years old. Upon seeing our family, she affectionately patted the heads of my 2 little lively sisters and said,
"Allah Hafiz, are you Muslim?" I said with a somewhat strange expression on my face. "Certainly, madam. Kindly ensure that the younger individuals do not venture into the other section of the bungalow. What exactly do you mean by younger individuals? I mean, neither the younger individuals nor the adults ought to venture into the other section of the bungalow. Only the cleaned and properly maintained portion should be utilized." "But why is that so? What is present there?" "There is absolutely nothing. It has remained vacant for numerous years, and the majority of it is in a state of disrepair. It is merely to avert any unfortunate incidents. I simply mentioned it as a precautionary measure. The rest is completely up to you all."
She began to depart, gazing at her walking stick.
"You do not reside in this bungalow?"
Mother inquired with astonishment.
No, I reside in a charming settlement nearby, not too far from this specific location. If you ever need anything, please do not hesitate to reach out to me."
We commenced exploring the entirety of the residence. Father and mother became preoccupied with organizing the household belongings. The mansion was exceptionally large, boasting approximately 20 rooms, of which nearly half were sealed off. They were in a state of disrepair. From the remaining 10 rooms, we selected 4 for our use. Even after the children organized their belongings in the rooms, 2 rooms remained unoccupied. These 2 leftover rooms had transformed into the playground for my 2 mischievous sisters. We were enrolled in the local village school. We would often venture out to explore the breathtaking surroundings in the official government vehicle that our father had acquired. The mountainous regions are exceedingly beautiful and captivating. In addition to the natural splendor, another aspect that is quite renowned in the mountains is the tales of black magic and apparitions. My classmates frequently frightened me by narrating ghost stories from various places. I would also return home and, to frighten my younger siblings, I would embellish those tales with additional details when narrating them. When all 3 of them frequently began crying out of terror, I would experience a sense of triumph and a grin would spread across my face. We had only recently arrived here just a few days ago. I was engaged in a game of cricket with my younger brother Sachin. After instructing me to look after the 3 children, Mother completed her tasks and went to sleep peacefully. Both of the younger sisters were also causing quite a commotion in the vacant rooms. I'm not sure what exactly transpired. All of a sudden, a very loud scream was heard. Sachin and I promptly abandoned the bat and ball right at that precise location and quickly dashed indoors. Upon hearing the disturbance, Mother also hastily emerged from her room. We hurried to the hall, but it was completely empty. The continuous sound of crying was resonating from somewhere. It didn't take long for me to discern that the sobbing sound was emanating from the other section of the mansion. I firmly grasped Sachin's hand and I ran into the forbidden part of the mansion. There were cobwebs and heaps of dust scattered all over the place. Looking ahead, I noticed Vinay lying unconscious on the floor, and Sony was standing beside her, crying loudly. Around the same time, Mother also reached us. Observing Vinay in an unconscious state, Mother let out a scream. Somehow, we managed to bring Vinay to a well-ventilated room outside. After comforting Sony and calming her down, I inquired of her. "Why did you see? And Vanini? Could you elaborate on how Mother ended up losing consciousness?"
I didn't observe it. I proceeded to the hall in search of Vinay. She might have retreated to conceal herself in the inner chamber. Upon hearing her scream, I hurriedly returned and discovered her sprawled on the floor in that manner.
Sony, sobbing, said that she started crying upon seeing Mahavini. I was also feeling worse. Should I take care of Mom, or should I take care of Sony, or should I look at unconscious Vini? Sachin quickly brought 2 glasses of water. He handed one glass to Mom and sprinkled the other on Vinay's face, and she slowly started regaining consciousness. Seeing Vinay safe and sound, Mom and Sony stopped crying. Mom lovingly placed her hand on Vinny's head and asked, "What happened?"
What happened, dear? How did you faint? Mother, I was searching for a location to conceal myself, and the entrance to that particular room was closed, but it had a safeguarding thread fastened to it. The moment I opened the door and entered the room, everything seemed to be engulfed in a thick haze of smoke. There was a strange and unusual odor, and when I tried to make my way out, it felt as if the exit had completely disappeared. I was utterly terrified, so I screamed out in fear, and after that, I have absolutely no recollection of how I ended up here.
Vinny elaborated while sipping on water.
So you were actually inside the room? How did you manage to get outside? You were found lying just outside the room.
Sachin said. I'm not entirely certain, brother, but I'm genuinely quite terrified. I will definitely never take that route again.
Vinny responded. During that particular moment, it was more crucial to soothe Vinny's nerves. Thus, the issue was resolved at that point, and Mother began the process of preparing halwa for them. Certain aspects of this incident were troubling me. If what Vinny mentioned is indeed true, then why was there no protective thread visibly tied on the door? Additionally, how did Vinny manage to exit the room? Where did the smoke originate from, and for what reason? What type of aroma are you referring to, Vinay? Peculiar thoughts were surfacing in my mind. In the midst of this, memories of my classmates came to mind. Previously, the tales I would hear for amusement were now causing me to ponder them deeply. A peaceful night's sleep was eluding me. By the time morning arrived, my bloodshot eyes were evidence of my sleepless night. Upon stepping out of the room, I discovered that Vinay was suffering from a fever. This revelation made me anxious once more. It seemed that fear had taken root within him, leading to his feverish condition. Throughout the entire day, Mom was diligently attending to Vinay, yet his fever displayed no indication of diminishing. As the night progressed and grew darker, his fever started to surpass the acceptable threshold. That night, the wise one, she kept mumbling something or the other. In the morning, she was taken to the hospital in Dad's official car. The next 3 days passed with her suffering from a fever in the same way. Mom and Dad were right there with Vinny in the hospital. Ultimately, on the 4th day, we received the encouraging news that Vinny's condition had significantly improved. After spending an additional 2 days in the hospital, Vinny returned home. Vinny is cherished by all of us. Her return brought back the joyful smiles on all our faces. Everyone was gradually returning to their usual routines. Except for one, Vinya no longer leapt around energetically as she used to. She frequently remained seated in a single spot. She would remain seated here observing us as we played. At first, we assumed it was just irritability and weakness stemming from her illness, but this turned into a lasting situation. Vinny communicated very sparingly. Most of the time, she remained in her room. Time continued to progress. This persisted for approximately 6 months. we made significant efforts to encourage her to join us in play, to smile. Nonetheless, there was truly no noticeable expression present on her face. She would simply stare blankly into the distance. If we insisted too much, she would simply stand up and withdraw to her room. And she would quietly close the door behind her. Mom and Dad were exhausted from repeatedly asking her what the issue was, but they never received any response from her. Then, one day, Dad arrived home with great excitement. He carried a box of delicious sweets in his hand. In an enthusiastic and lively tone, he called the two younger sisters and handed them the box of sweets. "Oh, I've been promoted, and my salary will increase significantly, and I won't have to relocate for the next 4 years," Dad said happily, and the news of the promotion brought broad smiles to all our faces. Dad attempted to feed Binny some sweets, but she gently pushed his hand away and ran inside. After Dad's promotion, there were no longer any financial issues at home. With the new position, Dad began earning a substantial amount more. The atmosphere at home began to change. Beautiful curtains, expensive clothes, and fine items started to enhance the splendor of our home. Everything was advancing far better than we had initially anticipated, so much so that amid the glitz and glamour, we began to overlook our habit of giving. Gradually, the year was nearing its conclusion. My sweet, lively sister had now transformed into a serious young girl. Her academic performance at school was also declining. Somehow, with some encouragement, she did manage to take the examination. However, the following year, she completely refused to attend school. Over the course of just 1 year, there was a substantial transformation in both her physical appearance and mental state. The once little girl now appeared to have matured into a young woman. My moment.
During college, there was a time when I often stayed up late, working on assignments. One night, deeply engrossed in my studies, I stayed awake longer than usual. Suddenly, I heard a whisper. The voice was clearly male, which startled me. Slowly and cautiously, I moved toward the hall. Then I came to the realization that the voice was emanating from Vinny's room. I quietly and cautiously peeked into Vinny's room and observed her standing in front of a wall, whispering something that was inaudible. There was absolutely no one present in the room except for Vinny, and what disturbed me the most was the sound of her voice. A girl who wouldn't utter a single word throughout the entire day was conversing with the walls in a lifeless and eerie voice in the middle of the night. Somehow, I managed to suppress my scream and quietly left from there. It was quite late at night, and I thought it best not to wake anyone up at that moment. How I spent each and every moment throughout that night is really difficult to articulate. When the morning finally arrived, I informed my mom and dad about everything. Mother trembled with the fear of something genuinely ominous. Mother and father quietly commenced searching for a tantric practitioner or an exorcist. 2. Several days later, they discovered a Muslim spiritual practitioner. He provided something to my mother and father to scatter in Jaswini's room and throughout the rest of the house. Somehow, they succeeded in sprinkling it all over the house without Vinny becoming aware. That day, after many years, Vinny ate well. She even smiled a couple of times. Mother possessed an unwavering faith in the tantric's abilities. The subsequent days were remarkably pleasant for our family. Minnie would occasionally come and sit with us for a while, and even smiled a few times, giving us hope that she might eventually recover. Father informed the tantric about the noticeable improvement in Vinny's condition, which significantly boosted his confidence. The following day, he arrived at the mansion and he assured that the entire house would be free of obstacles. As per the instructions of the respected tantric, all the necessary items were prepared in advance. He arrived at the mansion at the scheduled time. After completing all the preparations for the ritual, the exorcist ordered Vinny to be summoned. Vinny looked at the tantric and smiled mysteriously. She had draped her dupatta over her white salwar in an unusual manner, similar to how Muslim women adorn themselves during their prayer times. Observing Vinay in this particular form, we were all quite taken aback. As she made her way towards the ojha, she smiled once more and whispered something in a voice that was distinctly masculine. Almost immediately, the ojha collapsed to the ground. Right at that spot, our blood ran cold with an overwhelming sense of fear. In just a brief period, the ojha's eyes rolled back. Seeing Wasi, Minnie burst into loud laughter and angrily apologized. She commenced staring intently. Then she glanced at each of us and began to head towards her own room.
Vinay had gone to her room. We were all still in shock. Somehow, Dad gathered the courage to check the pulse of that exorcist. Beads of sweat appeared on Dad's forehead. He called out to me and instructed me to quickly get the car. Those shallow, intermittent breaths were continuing persistently. Baba genuinely did not want him to pass away. The overwhelming fear of impending disaster caused Dad's hands and feet to tremble uncontrollably. Somehow, we managed to transport him to the hospital and returned home by the time night fell. The house was eerily silent. Mom, Sachin and Sony were sitting together in one room, visibly frightened. Observing the delicate situation, Dad decided to get food from outside. After dinner, nobody wanted to retreat to their rooms. Somehow, after settling Sony with Mom and Dad, Sachin and I returned to our room. I couldn't understand whether to call this mansion haunted. Ever since we moved into this mansion, Dad has made significant progress. Can a haunted house really be auspicious for someone? Could it be that Vinay is experiencing some mental issues, which is why she's behaving this way? But the fact that the exorcist collapsed at that moment and the doctor said he had a heart attack, well, that could happen to anyone. I was trying to evaluate the truth I had witnessed through the lens of science. I was attempting to drift off to sleep. By the time the clock struck midnight, Sachin had already fallen into a deep slumber, but I found myself unable to do the same. To ensure that Mom, Dad, and Sony were all right, I made my way towards their room and noticed Vinay standing just outside Mom and Dad's room. His back was turned towards me, but when I listened intently, I could hear fragments of his words reaching my ears in a series of broken tones. I tried to hide in the room's corner and listen closely.
Please forgive our father and mother. They genuinely desire our well-being. For the sake of Allah, spare their lives or provide assistance, O Allah.
Vinny's voice resonated with me, and hearing her articulate language sent a shiver through my being. When and how did my elder sister, raised in a Hindu family, start speaking such eloquent Urdu? I couldn't focus. All of a sudden, my throat began to parch with thirst. What tales was she earnestly pleading for? What is the enigma of this Urdu language? I was unable to comprehend it. I spent the subsequent days confined to my room. On the third day, as I was seated at the dining table, she made a request for some kheer from our mother. Mom, with delight, prepared kheer for her. Over time, her requests for food continued to grow.
Occasionally, she would request snacks, and at other times, she would ask for fried bread. She would simply take her meals directly to her room. Her clothing and way of living had transformed to resemble that of Muslim women. One day, Mother recalled the old grandmother.
She was a Muslim as well.
What if they have potentially performed some kind of enchantment on my daughter?
She was attributing responsibility to the parents, but what can genuinely be accomplished? She won't readily concede that they engaged in any form of sorcery. We will require someone's assistance. In the evening, Mom expressed her emotions to Dad. I just returned from the hospital after visiting that shaman. Regrettably, half of his body is paralyzed. His tongue has unfortunately become twisted. He is not in a condition to speak or move around freely. Upon seeing me, he began making peculiar noises. I don't believe any sorcerer would want to come to this mansion now. Nevertheless, at Mom's insistence, Dad wandered to various sorcerers for the safety and well-being of their child, but no one was willing to offer assistance.